Hey everyone, it's Gabe, and today I'm going to go over some tourist tips for going to visit Charleston, South Carolina. So I've actually lived in Charleston for a couple years now, so I thought that I'd make a video about tips for people visiting because I see visitors all the time and I think most of them could use some help. So my first tip is to book as far in advance as you can for your trip, including hotels and restaurants. Especially when there's a big event going on, like the eclipse coming up that will cover right over Charleston. Sometimes hotels are booked 6 months in advance even. So as soon as you know that you want to come, go ahead and book your reservations. And some restaurants will have a limit on how early you can book, but I would recommend booking at least 2 weeks in advance if you can, especially if the restaurant is a fancier place or a higher priced place. Usually it will be booked for the prime times during the evening, especially along the weekends and Friday nights. And if you are already downtown or your trip is approaching and you haven't made a restaurant reservation, I would recommend getting the Open Table app, which is a restaurant reservation app. Most places down here have their restaurant listed on that app. And if you're walking around and you're ready for dinner, you can look on the app and see what reservations are available near you, because oftentimes it's better to get a reservation for 30 minutes from now versus waiting in line at the restaurant, which might take you an hour or 2 hours. So reservation is always the way to go. Even if you think you might not need one because there's an open slot, it means there's open slot for a reservation, not for someone waiting at the door. Another tip is, while you're down here, you definitely need to plan extra time for traffic and driving around. Google Maps is usually pretty accurate, but sometimes accidents happen at the blink of an eye down here, and it could add like 15 to 20 minutes to your route sometimes, depending on where you're going. So plan for traffic. And also, if it's during a weekday, our rush hour starts around 4:15 and usually lasts till about 6:45. So if you can avoid going out during that time, I would recommend it. And if you know there's somewhere you want to go later in the day, get there before rush hour happens, otherwise your transit time could be as much as doubled. If you're downtown and you're looking for a fun thing to do, a lot of tourists like to do the horse carriage rides, but I actually would not recommend them. They're very expensive, and since the heat index sometimes down here gets up to 110 degrees, the horses have had episodes of fainting in the streets or running away from the carriages. And just besides that, the carriage tours block traffic, they're slow, they're smelly. I wouldn't recommend it. You can find a lot of nice walking tours instead. But if you don't want to pay for a tour, you can just walk around the peninsula throughout the nice neighborhoods and everything, because a lot of the houses downtown have plaques on the side because they're a historic home, and it'll tell you who used to live there, when the house was built. Some of them are even haunted, so if you want to do your own DIY tour, you can totally do that anyway. You don't need to hire one. Now, when you're coming to visit, you need to think about where you want to stay. You can stay directly on the Charleston Peninsula, which I would recommend if you have a higher budget and or you're just looking for the best possible, most authentic Charleston experience. Downtown you'll find boutique hotels, hotels with nicer amenities, more Charleston feel. So if that's what you're looking for, you definitely would want to stay downtown. But if you're looking for a little bit of a better price range, or you don't mind so much about the hotel's amenity, or you don't mind staying at a chain hotel like a Hilton, then you can stay over the bridges in West Ashley, Mount Pleasant, or you can go up to the North Charleston, Ladson areas, and those are good if you're on a budget. I'd recommend when you're down here to go to a restaurant that is new to you, meaning lots of restaurants down here have appeared on magazines, travel shows, things like that. But I would go for something that maybe you haven't heard of, or maybe you've seen mentioned less, because pretty much all of the restaurants in Charleston are great. I've never had a bad experience at one. They always have great service. So I'd go to one that's new to you, because sometimes the ones that have been on a TV show aren't what they used to be. They're not as good because so many tourists go to them. They have to focus more on quantity rather than quality. So I would go to something that's a little bit more authentic feeling, not directed towards tourists, not advertised that much. And if you're coming around the second week of the month, then you might be interested in this. So every second Sunday of the month, all year round. King Street downtown, which is the main street, is shut off to cars and becomes pedestrian only. And there are lots of restaurants and shops all along the street that will put tables of merchandise and tables for you to eat at out on the street. And it's really nice, especially when the weather is really pleasant, not cold or anything. There will be tons and tons of people out. So it's cool to see everyone. There's food trucks sometimes, and everyone brings their dogs out. So if you're traveling with a dog, you can bring your dog, and it's just a nice time. It's really cool to see everyone out. Also, a cool experience downtown is where the normal Charleston City Market is, which always runs during the day. During the warmer months, starting around spring and going, I'm actually not sure how long, maybe autumn or something. There's a night market where the normal Charleston City Market is, and it's in usually 2 to 3 of the open air sections a little bit further down, not at the beginning where the closed in section is. And I think that's really great. In my opinion, it's actually better than the normal day market because it's smaller, there's less people, and the artisans and craftsmen and people selling things there are all selling things that are really authentic Charleston. They're all really nice, high quality handmade goods. You're not going to find any cheap souvenirs or anything like that. So if you're looking for really authentic souvenirs, great gifts for people, cool home goods, cool bath and body things, that is definitely a must-see, is the Charleston Night Market. And you can look it up online to see the exact dates and when it runs. And I would say that my last tip for visiting Charleston is just to, really experience it, to just walk around in the neighborhoods downtown, try and go a little bit off the main streets and see what's available, because the peninsula is not that big, you can't really get lost. But there's lots to see if you just go off the main road a little bit or keep walking down the street a little bit further. You'll find really cool things, and it's neat to see some of the architecture downtown and some of the oldest houses in the country, some of the most expensive real estate in the country. So I just recommend taking it all in, not worrying about having a checklist of things to do, because at the end of your trip, you're probably going to want to come back anyways. So thanks for watching. Those are my tips for being a tourist in Charleston. Let me know if you have any tips, leave them in the comments, and I'll see you next time.